Negligent discharges, this week on Mail Call Mondays. Mail Call Mondays is brought to you by Modular Driven Technologies. If you need a chassis system for your precision rifle, check out mdttac.com. Welcome to another Mail Call Mondays, and this Monday we are going to talk about negligent discharges. We've talked about them in the past, but apparently there's a little bit of a dust-up in the precision rifle competition shooting world about negligent discharges, and I haven't had time to go through and follow all the threads and listen to all the podcasts and all the videos out there, but it is a pretty straightforward topic, and I'm going to give you some rundown of what the rules are and basically my opinion of how to handle negligent discharges or accidental discharges, and there is a little bit of a difference between the two. So let's start out first by looking at the National Rifle League rules. And this is the currently published rules, and we'll leave a link down below if you actually want to read them yourself. But they describe a negligent discharge as defined as any round unintentionally discharged from a firearm during a transition, movement, and/or weapons manipulation, or a round intentionally discharged during a ceasefire period. The competitor shall receive a match DQ and removal from competition. Now, conversely, they describe an accidental discharge as accidental discharge / mechanical failure. An accidental discharge is defined as any round unintentionally discharged from a firearm due to a mechanical failure. The participant will be removed from the event until he or she can repair the rifle to a safe working order. The shooter will receive a 0 for that stage, and all follow-up stages will be forfeited during this downtime. And they also go on to talk about false starts, which I would lump those into negligent discharges, and that's firing before the start signal, and that will result in a 0 for the stage. So I think it's pretty clear cut that a negligent discharge is when the shooter places their finger on the trigger and causes the rifle to fire, either intentionally or unintentionally, but the shooter initiates the action that causes the rifle to fire. An accidental discharge would be an equipment failure that causes the rifle to fire. Either a round cooks off if you're talking about high-volume semi-automatic weapons, or you have a trigger failure, or the weapon fires on bolt closing. Those are all things that have occurred in competition or in training, so I would consider those accidental discharges, although you start to blur the line a little bit when shooters make their equipment unsafe. So, but for the rules, for putting things in black and white, I think that is a pretty good rundown. Now, the Precision Rifle series goes into a lot more wordiness on their rules, but basically the rundown on PRS as well is that a negligent discharge is taken seriously, and a AD or ND will cause you to be disqualified from the match. They go on to argue that if it can be established that the cause of the discharge is due to a broken or defective part of the firearm, the competitor has not committed any safety infraction in this section, and a disqualification will not be invoked, but the competitor's scores for that stage will be a 0. The firearm must be immediately presented for inspection to a match director or his delegate, who will inspect the firearm and carry out any tests necessary to establish that a broken or defective part caused the discharge. A competitor may not later appeal a disqualification for an accidental discharge due to a broken or defective part if they fail to present the firearm for inspection prior to leaving the course of fire. So there it is a little bit of a argument if you say that, hey, my weapon was malfunctioning at the time, you present it, they're able to determine that was actually the case, then that's a little bit of an excuse. So those are the two major competition bodies. That is their rule book, the National Rifle League and the Precision Rifle Series. Now, if we jump over into other firearms competitions, IDPA and USPSA are kind of the two big ones, and their rules are very similar. If you have an AD or an ND, you're done. You're immediately disqualified from the match. And I see some merit to that. Let's talk about, first of all, negligent discharges. The primary rule of firearms handling: where's my muzzle, where's my trigger finger? If you know where your muzzle is pointed, then you're not going to worry about sending rounds into the ground when the target is 500 yards downrange. If you know where your trigger finger is, you're not going to have problems with sending rounds into the ground when you didn't intend to send a round downrange. So where's my muzzle and where's my trigger finger should be 100% on your mind anytime you are handling firearms. Now, in field matches, it's not as clean and neat as an IDPA or a USPSA match. We're constantly picking up firearms, setting them down, moving in and out of stages, moving around. So it makes it even more critical that you know where your weapon is pointed and where your trigger finger is. And the fact that an RO cleared you at the last stage and your chamber is empty is no excuse for anything, because ROs get tired, ROs get inattentive, they try not, they do the best job they possibly can. But at the end of a 2-day match, we are all worn down, to include the ROs. It's possible for somebody to miss something. Not all matches require chamber flags. I'm becoming a bigger fan of chamber flags, or things like, barrel coolers like the Rifle Cool here that I can stick in there and boom, there is nothing in my chamber. The bolt can't close. There's no way for a firing pin to impact a cartridge. So that is really one of the big things. Now, if you have a negligent discharge, what it pretty much indicates is your brain was not in the right place to conduct firearms training or firearms competition on that day. A negligent discharge is extremely dangerous. Obviously, you didn't intend to fire, so it very easily could have caused a casualty as well. So I really believe a negligent discharge is a 100% DQ. Pack your gun up. You don't have to leave, but the gun's got to go up. You're not handling any more firearms or shooting for the rest of the activity. Now, when we switch over into accidental discharges, it gets a little bit more troublesome. Some of the sanctioning bodies and some individual match directors and some smaller matches will allow that if you have an accidental discharge because of an equipment failure, that you can take the gun off, you can try to repair the gun, get it fixed, whatever, and then bring it back and then continue to shoot if the gun is back up and running. I take a little bit of an opposing view to that. I think if your gun failed and caused an accidental discharge, that gun needs to be outlawed for the rest of the match. It needs to go, it needs to get put away. If you brought a spare gun, I think that's great. Bring the spare gun out and shoot it. Somebody else wants to loan you a spare gun, bring the spare gun out and shoot it. But if you have an AD, you've demonstrated that that weapon is not safe to function in the match. Matches are not clean, sterile workbenches where you have plenty of time to sit down and figure things out. It's hectic. If you know you're getting zeros for every stage that's going, you're going to be rushing to try to slap stuff together, and the possibility of bringing an unsafe weapon back out onto the line is really there. So I say if a gun has an AD and it is not a shooter issue, it is a gun issue, that gun needs to be taken off the line and the gun needs to be done for the match. I know not all matches do that, but that's my opinion on it. Now, where we really start to get into a stickier situation is when a shooter, and I believe this is what caused part of this big blow up, when a shooter presses the trigger and sends a bullet in a direction that a bullet was not intended to go. The one video that I did see specifically, the shooter, it appeared that he transitioned to a left side drill, which is, if you don't practice shooting support side, it's very awkward, it feels very strange, and he slammed the bolt down, dropped down to the trigger, and his finger pressed the trigger. It's pretty obvious in the video that he closed the bolt and finger pressed the trigger. And that sent a round down range. There was no observation of where the round impacted. Apparently the RO didn't see what happened to the shooter. They were most likely spotting for the target to see where the round impacted on the target. We run into this situation where a lot of people will say, well, the round went downrange. The round didn't endanger anyone. It perceivably impacted somewhere within the impact area. It wasn't a danger. And so then we run into this, should that shooter be allowed to continue, or should the shooter have been DQ'd and been done for the match? The problem that I have with this is, while the range was hot, active shooting was going on, the shooter was justified in engaging a target downrange, the act was unintentional, and the act was because he either was not prepared for that match or he was violating cardinal rule. Where's my trigger finger? He obviously was not on target and ready to press the trigger off. Your finger should not engage the trigger until your sights are on target. It makes no sense whatsoever. The amount of time it takes to go from straight trigger finger to bent trigger finger on the trigger is fractions of a second. It is not going to appear on the clock. We've done this stuff before where we have timed how much time it takes you to flip off a safety selector when you drive a rifle up and fire a shot. The amount of time to go from straight trigger finger to pressing the trigger does not warrant placing the finger on the trigger when the sights are not on the target. So keep that finger straight and off the trigger. If the shooter had done that, kept the finger straight and off the trigger until he was on the scope, looking through with the scope on the target, and then put his finger on the trigger, then it would have just been a miss. It would not have been a negligent discharge. So I have to argue that even though that shot did not endanger anybody, we are reinforcing a bad behavior, and we're not punishing a behavior that should be avoided at all costs. So I argue that in that case, the shooter should have been DQ'd and pulled off the line. And if you're in a situation like that and you know that's what happened, you should probably DQ yourself. Even if the RO didn't catch it, you should probably have the integrity to say, hey, that was an ND, I'm done. I know that's very difficult to do when you've paid for travel money, you've paid for your hotel, you've paid for your entry fee and all that stuff. But again, that's what really makes it an integrity issue. Now, my thoughts on this have changed as I've gone along and shot more competitions and seen more of this stuff. I used to feel that if the round went down range, well, it wasn't really that big of a deal, but where do we draw the line on that? If you're prone and you do that, it's okay, but if you're picking the gun up and you do that, it's not, or if you're moving to a different position and you do it, it's not. I think it's really easy to define if you are not on the scope and you did not intend to send a round down range. It's pretty obvious if you're not looking through the scope that you didn't intend to fire a shot. Then that should be a DQ. It's a DQ in USPSA. It's a DQ in IDPA. If you crank a shot off and it goes yards away from the target, that's a DQ. You crank a shot off into the ground in front of the target, that's a DQ. It really shouldn't be any different in precision rifle shooting. And in fact, the ability to cause some significant destruction with these things at a very, very long distance should make us even more warranted about that. Even if you are pointed down range and you don't have a bag under your stock and you got your bipod up a little bit high, there are ranges that I have shot on that if your round clears the back berm, you can go into populated areas, and even something like a 308 or a 223, if you clear a berm at a decent trajectory, that bullet is going to carry lethal energy well outside of the impact area of most ranges here, unless you're shooting on a military range or one that backs up to water or to an extended impact area, say a mountain, something like that. So we really need to hold ourselves to a little bit of a higher bar, for lack of a better term. It's something that I really strive to do. I ask myself constantly, where is my trigger finger? Where is my muzzle? Even if we break it down, we've got the 4 safety rules that everybody understands. Treat every weapon as if it were loaded. Keep your weapon pointed in a safe direction until you're ready to fire. Keep your finger straight and off the trigger until you're ready to fire, and know your target and what lies beyond. But the 2 infallible rules are: know where your muzzle's pointing, know where your trigger finger is. If you follow those rules, then you're never going to shoot something that you didn't intend to shoot. So that's kind of my opinion on it. Without getting in here and reading all the rules, I think it's kind of cut and dry. If you guys want to read all the rules for PRS, NRL, IDPA, and USPSA, I'll leave them in the links down below, but it's pretty similar across all of the shooting disciplines, that if you crank around where it doesn't go, you need to pack your stuff and leave. And I know it sounds harsh, but it's better than getting shot. Nobody wants to shoot another human being in a recreational environment. That would just be absolutely horrible for everyone involved, for match directors, spectators, the guy that got shot, the guy that did the shooting, everything. So we need to really harp on safety. And there is a level of safety, and then there is safety Nazism. I've seen both at matches. I've seen unsafe conditions that have not been addressed by ROs, and then I have seen taking it well above and beyond. There's a happy medium, but I think this whole thing about cranking a shot off when you didn't need to crank a shot off, I think that can be very easily, quickly identified and taken care of. But that is my opinion. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. Please leave your comments down in the comments section below. Is there something I'm not looking at here? Is there a situation where you believe that if a shooter discharges a round that they should still be allowed to continue to shoot the course of fire, even if it was an ND or an AD? Please let me know. I love to hear what you guys have to say. I love the discussions that we have down in the comments below. So please drop it down there. If you have any questions or comments over anything that we've covered in this video, please leave it in the comments section below or send it to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you like the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you click that little bell icon down below to be notified when we release new videos. If you guys want to help support the content that you know and love, because it does take money for us to produce these videos, please click the link down below and check out Patreon. That will give you a chance to see a little bit behind the curtain, be involved in some of our live chats, and help support the channel. We would love to have you over there. And until next time, get out and shoot.